Hello and welcome to the Daily Red. Today is Friday. Today is July 4th. Today is a day when in America most will be celebrating, but those of us in the Liverpool family are in mourning due to the passing of Diogo Jota, aged 28, in a car crash which also claimed the life of his brother. It's a little over 24 hours since this news began to break and filter through to all of us, and we were still trying to figure out if it was real, if it was fake, if it was some sort of horrendous prank, if it was just a lie. And unfortunately, the news is true, and it's something we've all had to try to come to terms with over the last 24 hours. But I think I can speak for everybody when I say it'll take an awful lot longer than 24 hours to come to terms with this. I don't want to talk just yet about Diogo Jota, the footballer. I want to talk about Diogo Jota, the man, a man that none of us knew. We as fans don't know these footballers. They don't know us. And yet we still connect with them on a very deep basis. They mean the world to us. And it's only when something like this happens that you fully grasp how deep that bond goes, how much they matter to you. You know, we watch these lads play every week, twice a week. And at times we put them out of our minds. And, you know, in pre-season, you're not necessarily thinking about what they're doing with their day until something like this happens. And Diogo Jota and his brother, André Silva, were travelling by car to catch a ferry to the UK because Diogo had undergone surgery on his lung and was advised not to fly because of the risks involved with any kind of pulmonary incident and flight. This is an injury that Diogo sustained when we played Chelsea in the first half of last season. An injury that he came back from, played the rest of the season, played through the Nations League, and then got the surgery. That speaks volumes about the man who put his own health second and the good of the club and his national team first. When you read the outpouring of love, of tears, of heartbreak from the manager, Arne Slot, his words were incredibly eloquent. From Richard Hughes and Michael Edwards, again, a strong statement from them about how important Diogo was, and then all of his teammates. And there were a few that really jumped out to me. Ibu Konate's statement really jumped out. Caoimhín Kelleher's, I know Caoimhín is no longer a teammate, but he was someone that was very close with Diogo. His statement, very powerful. But Andy Robertson's really hit hard. Andy and Diogo were good friends, and you could tell it was something that had badly affected Andy Robertson when he got the news. We saw former teammates come forward and speak about him, and, you know, in their own way through social media and whatever else. The common themes were not about his footballing ability, which speaks for itself. It was about the man, about the joy he brought on a daily basis to the building, about the smile that he always had on his face, about the fact that he was just a normal guy who'd never bought into the whole celebrity, famous footballer nonsense. He was just a guy who realized how incredibly fortunate he was and never forgot that. So many of the messages that were sent about him spoke about his commitment, his adoration, his complete devotion to his family, his wife, who he only married 11 days before, to his 3 children, all of them under the age of 5. This was a guy who had everything he could ever want. The woman of his dreams, 3 beautiful children, 3 dogs, great career, national icon. And in the blink of an eye, that was all taken away from him in a very cruel manner. Had it not been for the fact that he'd had that surgery, he could have flown back. He wouldn't have had to have been in that car with his brother. And the idea of parents losing a child never sits well with me. No parent should ever bury their child. And his parents are now facing the reality of having to bury both of their children. It's impossible to comprehend the trauma that they're experiencing right now. The depth of their mourning. Those that knew him, that loved him, that knew his brother, that loved his brother, what they're feeling right now. We all know how we're feeling, and it's horrible. It's like a dream that you really, really want to wake up from because it's become such a nightmare. But you can't wake up from it because it is the reality. And again, with us, like footballers come and go, we will eventually deal with our grief. We'll always remember him, but it won't feel like this forever. But for his family, for his friends, for his loved ones, it will feel like this forever. His poor parents coming to terms with having lost both sons. His poor wife, who's lost the only man she's ever loved. Not only her husband, but her best friend. They've been together since they were kids. And now she has to come to terms with a world in which he's no longer in it. They're 3 little kids. 3 little children who will grow up now without a father. 3 little children waking up into a world where daddy is gone and they don't really understand why. 3 kids that he will never get to see grow up and experience life and guide them. A man who was completely devoted to them, whose whole life was aimed at making the lives of those around him better. And you hear the stories about his selfless work with charities, the way he committed himself to helping to broaden the scope of the women's game, to bring more attention to the women's game. Things he didn't have to do, things he wasn't even asked to do, things he took upon himself to do. The amount of young people that he helped out through his esports team, gave them a career, gave them a launch pad and a platform to go and be the best versions of themselves. You know, often when people die, there's a lot of fakeness in terms of how people speak about them. There are people who pass away who nobody would have had a good word to say about when they were alive. But when they pass away, people come out with the fake platitudes and stuff. It's not the case with Diogo Jota. Everybody who ever encountered him always had nothing but good to say about him. And the stories, again, that you're hearing from people that knew him at different stages of his life, different stages of his career, how he never forgot where he came from. Born in Porto, played for his local club at Gondomar, moved to Pacos de Ferreira, spent 3 years there in total, moved on to Atletico Madrid, was loaned to Porto, which was a life-altering moment for him, getting to play for his local club in front of huge, huge crowds. From there, he joins Wolves, joining them, remember, in the Championship, vital in helping them get promoted to the Premier League. Playing in the Premier League had been a dream of his. He grew up watching Cristiano Ronaldo, and Cristiano at Manchester United inspired Diogo to want to play in the Premier League. He helps Wolves get promoted, and he keeps them up. 2 excellent seasons in the Premier League for them. But while doing that, he never forgets where he comes from. There's a lovely story from, I think it's the president of Pacos de Ferreira, talking about how he was at Wolves. They'd been relegated to the second division after he left, and they were about to get promoted. And he texted, not to say I'm coming to the game, to ask, would he be welcome? Would it be okay if he came to the game? And then when they were promoted, he celebrated. And then in the couple of weeks after that, they were crowned champions of the second division in Portugal. And he again texted the president to say, we are promoted, we are champions. And he'd been gone for 3 or 4 years. He'd moved on to bigger and better things, but he hadn't forgotten where he came from. He hadn't forgotten the club that helped him achieve his dreams, that gave him the platform to go and achieve his dreams. And it seems like that was something that stood with him. And, you know, we signed him in 2020. I've never heard a negative thing from a Wolves fan about him. They were devastated that he was leaving. But we see it all the time when players leave and fans are hurt by it, and their way of reacting is, rather than, you know, blame the club that sold him, it's to lash out at the player. I never saw one Wolves fan lash out at Diogo Jota, never once. And all of them still speak glowingly, and they're hurting as much today as we are. I spent time yesterday just going through the comments on different Wolves posts about him. They're hurting every bit as much as we are. He's been gone from there for 5 years. But such was the impact he made on them and their lives in the 3 years he spent with them, that they're just devastated. They're heartbroken. And I have to say, that's exactly how I felt all day yesterday and how I still feel today. I feel devastated. I feel heartbroken. Not for me, but for his family, for his wife, for his children, for those that knew and loved him. Because I can't even imagine the grief they're dealing with today. Not again, not just with Diogo, but with his brother passing in the car crash as well. And his brother, it's important that we remember Andre. It is important that we remember him, because he didn't have the type of career that Diogo had. He was playing in the second division in Portugal. He wasn't going to be a star like his brother. But he's still a human being. He still lost his life far too early. He just turned 25 in April. He idolized his brother, and his brother adored him. They were best friends. And we don't know the full details of what happened. I don't want to speculate. I don't even want to go into it. What I do want to say briefly is shame on the Daily Mail, who seem to take this as an opportunity to drive revenue with clickbait, with horrific images that had no business being shared in a public space, with private images such as Diogo's wife trying to come to terms with the news she'd heard. Shame on the Daily Mail. Now, to be clear, I've seen people call for Liverpool to ban the Daily Mail. Lewis Steele has been getting abuse over this. From what I've been told, Lewis Steele was working very hard in the background to try and get those images taken down, to get some of those posts removed. Lewis Steele is not responsible for any of that. Unfortunately for Lewis, he works for a newspaper with zero moral standards, zero ethics. But this is the nature of the beast. Let's talk about Diogo the footballer. So, he joins us in 2020. He's the backup forward we've been crying out for. We'd had Mo, Bobby, and Sadio, but behind them there was always a massive drop-off to number 4, whether it was Divock, whether it was Shaq. And Diogo was the guy to supplement those front 3. So, in his first season, he plays 30 games. He arrives late, if you remember. It's the COVID year. So, transfer window's all messed up. The season's starting later than it normally would. He signs on the 19th of September. That season, he played 30 games in all competitions. He started off really well. Scores on his debut against Arsenal. Arsenal would become a favoured punching bag for Diogo over his time with Liverpool. Scores against Sheffield United, scores against West Ham, scores against Leicester, scores against Brighton. He also scored in the Champions League for us. He scored against Midtjylland and he scored a hat-trick away to Atalanta. And then he got injured. You remember he gets the ankle or knee injury, and he's out for like 2.5 months, and it kind of torpedoes our season a little bit, especially as defenders start to fall down and get injured. He comes back in March, I think. March. Scores against Wolves, scores 2 more against Arsenal, scores against Manchester United. For this season, in his 30 appearances, Diogo puts together 13 goals and 1 assist, and we are very, very excited about what this fella's going to be able to offer us. The following season, 21-22, is arguably the one and only season that he had good luck with injuries. Plays 55 games, scores 21 goals with 8 assists. In the Champions League, he scores against Atletico Madrid in the 2-0 home win. He gets assists away to Atleti and away to Benfica. Home to Benfica. In the Premier League, scores against Norwich on the opening day, scores against Burnley in the next game, scores against Brentford a few weeks later, gets a goal and an assist against Manchester United, once again scores against Arsenal, gets 2 against Southampton, 1 against Everton, 1 against Newcastle, 1 against Spurs, gets an assist against Crystal Palace, 2 goals against Leicester, another goal against Arsenal because of course, goal and assist against Watford, and a goal against Manchester City, an assist against Manchester United, an assist against Newcastle, an assist against Southampton. He also scored 2 FA Cup goals, 1 against Cardiff, 1 against Nottingham Forest, as we went on to win the FA Cup. He scored 3 goals in the EFL Cup, 1 against Leicester, and of course, 2 against Arsenal as we went on to win the EFL Cup. The following season is 22-23. He only plays 28 games. He does manage 7 goals and 8 assists. And the one thing you could never knock with Diogo was that he was productive. So in the Champions League, he gets an assist against Ajax and then a hat-trick of assists in a 17-minute sub-appearance against Rangers. In the Premier League, he starts the season with a hamstring injury, comes back, gets an assist against Arsenal, gets injured again, playing against Manchester City, and ends up missing the World Cup, which is heartbreaking. Comes back, gets an assist against Wolves, an assist against Manchester City, 2 goals and an assist against Leeds, 2 goals against Forest, a goal against Tottenham, and 2 goals against Southampton. Doesn't play in either cup competition that year. 23-24, plays 32 games, 15 goals, and 5 assists. In the Europa League, as it is, scores against Union and scores in both games against Toulouse. In the Premier League, scores against Bournemouth, scores against West Ham, scores against Forest, scores against Brentford, scores against Burnley, scores 2 against Bournemouth and gets an assist, 2 assists against Newcastle, a goal against Chelsea, a goal against Burnley, an assist against Brentford, a goal against Fulham, gets an assist against Arsenal in the FA Cup, scores against Norwich, scores against Leicester in the EFL Cup, but he deals with 3 or 4 different injuries that year. But 15 goals and 5 assists in 32 appearances, only 1,700 minutes. Amazing productivity from Diogo. Of course, we win the EFL Cup that year as well. And then the last season, what would turn to be his final season for us, which we didn't know at the time. 37 appearances, 9 goals, 4 assists. Scores against Ipswich on the opening day, gets an assist against Brentford, gets 2 assists against Wolves, scores against Crystal Palace, and then he gets injured against Chelsea on the 20th of October. And that's the injury that led to this surgery. 8 months later, 8 months later, he has the surgery. He misses time, he comes back, he scores against Fulham, scores against West Ham, scores against Forest, gets an assist against Villa, also scored against Accrington in the FA Cup and captained the club for the first time, scored 2 against West Ham in the EFL Cup. His final goal was scored on the 2nd of April, a 1-0 win at home to Everton. You know, when you go through all the goals he scored for us, so many of them are against the top clubs, goals and assists against the top clubs. Obviously, he loved Arsenal. Loved embarrassing Arsenal. Did a pretty good job at embarrassing Everton as well. Diogo was one for the big occasion. And obviously last season, we won the Premier League. And with us, he wins the Premier League, the FA Cup, and 2 EFL Cups. He also won the Championship with Wolves. He won the Nations League with Portugal in 2019, and again this year. He's putting together a really nice collection of medals For his national team, 49 games, 14 goals. Pretty respectable return, especially given a lot of those appearances came off the bench. 182 games for Liverpool, 65 goals. It's a really good return. Paid back every penny we invested in him. Paid it back tenfold. Brought us joy, brought us magic, brought us goals that mattered. Never, ever took a backward step. Always put club ahead of himself. And again, like I said earlier, when you read about his devotion to his family, you understand this was a good man. This was a man to admire. If your kids are going to have role models, have them have role models who are like Diogo Jota. Selfless individuals. Dedicated individuals. Hard-working individuals. Guys who maximize every single last drop of talent that they're born with. Because that's what Diogo Jota did. He took what talent he had and he worked as hard as possible. And he maximized every single bit of talent he had for the best possible outcome. And in the days and weeks that are to come, we'll gain more of an understanding of what's going on and what's happened. We'll come to terms with it. We'll begin to deal with it. I'm sure the club are already looking at ways to remember Diogo. I know the idea of retiring the number 20 has been floated, and I think that absolutely should happen. I'm sure there'll be some other tribute laid to him as well, whether that's at the training ground or at Anfield. But those are things to talk about in days and weeks to come. Those are not the things to worry about today. Today it's about thinking about that young woman, those 3 children, those 2 parents who've lost everything. And sending as much positivity and love as we can muster in their direction. On Anfield Index, there is an article written by Tony Evans. I think it's a really nice piece about Diogo. I think everybody should go and read that. We will have more podcasts to come, obviously, more articles to come. Some of the podcasts that are to come were recorded before this news broke. So if they seem a little bit dated, that's why. They would have been recorded on Wednesday with the idea that they'd go out yesterday, but obviously with the news yesterday, nothing went out at all. I wanted mine to be the first voice you heard from Anfield Index, and whether that's the right decision or not, I don't know. It's something I wanted to do. Diogo's a player I really liked. I loved him at Wolves. I was thrilled when we signed him. There's a podcast with me and Gags you can go and find in the archives. And I know I had advocated for selling the guy, but he was still a player that I thought had great value for us. Because he's a man who had great value for us. And again, like you see the words of the manager, the CEO, the sporting director, people from Wolves, Jurgen Klopp, Cristiano Ronaldo, Kenny Dalglish, all of these people who knew him so well have spoken about him in such glowing terms. He was 1 in a million. Diogo Jota, forever our number 20, forever a Premier League champion. Rest in peace.